I'm Christopher Carrick of SabotageTheSaboteur.com, and today I want to talk to you about the frustrating, disempowering, and destructive habit of self-sabotage, and how you can go from discouraged to encouraged by the appearance of what I call your inner saboteur.
Sometimes I think working for myself is a great idea, and other times I wonder why anyone would ever want to hire me.
I can't do absolutely everything, but if I want it done right, I always have to do it myself.
I just can't seem to get off the ground. Something's always in the way.
I get to the end of the day and I wonder what happened. Where did all the time go? Why didn't I get anything done?
What do these people have in common? They are all struggling to succeed as solopreneurs, and they are all in their own way. Some are aware of it, others have an uncomfortable suspicion but don't want to admit it. None of them understand why they're having such problems or what to do about it. There just seems to be a part of us that has an inexplicable tendency to be our own worst enemy. And solopreneurs, with all the responsibility and none of the support of a typical business, are more susceptible to self-sabotage than practically anyone. Usually, we avoid messing with this area. It's painful, discouraging, and mysterious. But ignoring it not only doesn't work, it actually makes it worse. It's also where there's the most opportunity for growth. The parts that are unknown to us are where the biggest epiphanies, breakthroughs, and inspirations come from. So what do we do about it? To begin, I suggest you personify it, like the idea of the inner child. We each have an inner saboteur, an aspect inside each of us that seems to work against our interests. Thinking about it this way makes it easier to detach and observe it. Instead of getting wrapped up in it, you are collecting information to help you recognize it as it's happening and to understand it better to help you deal with it. Take a minute to consider your saboteur. Think of a time recently when you identified a high priority task but just couldn't or wouldn't get it done. Or when you felt besieged by obstacles that just wouldn't go away. Or when you didn't follow up an idea or a prospect because you weren't prepared enough or good enough, or it wasn't going to work anyway. Recognize your saboteur yet? What does it do or say to get you stuck, or distracted, or discouraged, or confused, or overloaded? What ideas or beliefs does it repeat in your head? What fearful outcomes does it threaten you with? What or who does the voice in your head sound like? Where do the feelings and sensations show up in your body? What mistakes does it lure you into repeating? See what else you notice in the coming days about how your saboteur feels, sounds, and operates. Now let's look at a difficult question the saboteur brings up. Why would I do this to myself? It's confusing, isn't it? Are you afraid of failure? Afraid of success? What does that even mean? Don't you want a thriving business? More money? More freedom? Less stress? Of course you do, but not all of you. We exist on many levels simultaneously, and they don't all agree. In fact, some are at war with each other. While most of your conscious self agrees that you do in fact want success in your business, other aspects of you have a totally different agenda: to protect you from change by removing choice. The ego and the nervous system are both opposed to change that takes them too far out of their comfort zone. It doesn't matter if it is change you are desiring and even working to create. All your efforts can be undermined, counterbalanced, and undone if they feel sufficiently threatened. We get caught in a paradox. Most of the things we are wanting, seeking, and working to create are things we don't have and are therefore unfamiliar to us. Unfortunately, the unknown, regardless of how good we've decided it will be or how much we want it, tends to send us deep into the stress zone, activating the saboteur. Next thing you know, you forget to set the alarm, hire the wrong assistant, or overcommit and implode with overwhelm. Your saboteur finds a way to keep you from starting to write that book, making those important calls, or taking steps to get the support and assistance you require. You get to the end of another day, unable to cross it off your list, and you wonder why. What's going on? This brings us to the good news. The saboteur doesn't show up for no reason. It doesn't get bored. It doesn't torture you for its own amusement. It responds to the specter of radical change and catastrophic unfamiliarity, which the ego perceives as a threat to its survival. But if we look at the situation from another angle, it can be described quite differently. The saboteur has been activated by the presence of possibility. In other words, the prospect of expanding your business or your bank account or getting well known in your market seemed too real. It wants you to believe you do not have the choices it feels threatened by. You're never going to have the time to write that book. You're never going to get organized enough to restructure your business. You're never going to be able to focus long enough on one thing to see this new idea through. But the truth is that the saboteur emerged in the first place because something started to feel very possible. You started talking about it, thinking of actually doing it, maybe even taking steps. We don't sabotage our dreams, we sabotage our potential realities. It wants you to believe it can't be done, and you are not capable anyway. The goal is for you to feel bad about yourself and overwhelmed by the situation. What I'm suggesting is that when you notice yourself getting in your own way, you say instead, apparently my dream is dangerously possible. I must be onto something. So here's what you can do to begin to sabotage your saboteur. Remember that list from before? All the ways your saboteur feels, sounds, and operates? Number 1, gather information. First, become very familiar with this information. The idea is to become so aware of all these strategies and tactics that you notice them fully in the moment as they are occurring. I suggest you schedule some check-in points throughout your workday. These are times to pause and ask yourself, has the saboteur shown up today? And if so, how? It's a great way to gather information about your saboteur and to practice coming to consciousness. Most of the saboteur's tricks work either because you aren't fully aware of them at the time, almost like they're being mumbled in your ear in the background, or because you don't see them for what they are, curveballs meant to throw you off your game. Number 2, wake up. When you're able to notice your sabotaging habits in the moment, they can serve as wake-up calls, red flags to alert you to the presence of the saboteur. This gives you a chance to make a different choice. Question the attacks the saboteur is launching, and perhaps most importantly, number 3, flip the script. Look for the possibility that stimulated its appearance in the first place. When you notice the activation of one of your habitual blocks designed to distract, depress, or confuse you, instead of getting swept up in the momentum, ask yourself, what happened right before this started? Were you avoiding some task that made you uncomfortable? Was there a chunk of open time to do something really productive? Did you flash on an exciting idea? This is what the saboteur is trying to direct your attention away from. Why? Because there's power there. There's a possibility there. When you relate to the saboteur in this new way, you switch your focus from fear, stuckness, and hopelessness to thriving, excitement, and possibility. Number 4, repeat. Now bear in mind, this takes practice. You've been doing it the other way for a long time, and a new mindset requires repetition. But if you're willing to take the time, you can create an entirely new relationship with your saboteur that results in something like this.
Sally was getting ready to take a break from writing an article for her email newsletter and call her mother. She was feeling obligated, like she'd be a bad daughter if she didn't. All of a sudden, she recognized the weight of the should feeling attached to this action. Through observation and practice, Sally had learned that this energy she was experiencing was a red flag. She knew when she felt this way, heavy, slow, negative, obligated, that the saboteur must be at work. After pausing to gather information, Sally realized that the impulse to call her mother was intended to derail her day, her mother's voice in her head. It was a tool the saboteur regularly employs against her. It's the one that tells her she has little chance of succeeding, and just who does she think she is anyway? She shouldn't expect things to go well for her, and she's only setting herself up for disappointment. Instead of habitually agreeing with this point of view, Sally could now decide to call her mother after work instead. This awareness, it also gave her an opportunity to intentionally align herself with a different belief about herself, one that would help her be more productive for the rest of her day, and it would also allow her to be less susceptible to her mother's beliefs and fears when they would talk later. Then Sally looked for the possibility that had stirred all this up in the first place. She realized that she had been avoiding following up with the prospective client she had met at a networking lunch the day before. Yesterday she'd been excited about a promising new lead, and already today she'd forgotten about it. With the saboteur's help, Sally had clarified that this would be the perfect time to make that call, and that this was the perfect action to help offset the negative belief her mother's voice had invited her to adopt. Just who did Sally think she was? Someone with an exciting possibility to pursue.
Ready to take on your saboteur? I've spent the last decade helping creative professionals and business owners who struggle with self-sabotage to become more productive and regain trust in themselves. If you liked what you heard here and want to know more, then download my free audio, Sabotage the Saboteur: How to Get Out of Your Own Way and Accomplish Your Goals.